Daniel.
You promised you wouldn't bully me this time.
Well, remember last week where for some reason I just couldn't stop myself from going after you at every turn. And I think the reason why is that I really didn't sleep well the night before. So you just became, you were the first human being I saw after waking up. So you just became my punching bag.
And fortunately, you slept really well last night, right, Gil?
Wish I could say that. I did not sleep well last night or the night before. So you have 2 times the drubbing coming. I'll try to hold back. But if I can't, I might end up looking like Ben Affleck. What? Late breaking news. We talk about the biggest news of the week here. Should we do an introduction? Welcome to One Take. This is our weekly live stream where we talk about the latest movie and TV news of the week, talk about what we've been watching, or talk about whatever. And if you join the live stream, you can participate. Cole Schramm here says he can't wait to see what Burton comes up with for Beetlejuice 2. And if he had brought up some other topics, we'd discuss those too.
And this is Gil.
And that's Daniel. You can also listen to this on a podcast app, any podcast app, by the way. So late breaking news I just found out about this morning. Ben Affleck opened the door for Jennifer Lopez to let her into the car, his wife. Chivalry is not dead. But he had a very stressed look on his face. And when he closed the door, he kind of went like this.
Ooh. Trouble in paradise.
Possibly.
That could be a headline.
Possibly. Any thoughts on this story, Daniel?
I'm trying to... Let me come up with a very spicy take so we could cut it out as a YouTube short.
Yeah.
I think that maybe Jennifer Lopez is actually thinking of getting back together with her previous boyfriend, who I don't know any of them, but I'm sure it was somebody famous. And Ben Affleck found out about it, and he's all stressed about it. And he's also considering a big career change because he really wants to get more into directing.
He's annoyed that Michael Keaton's overshadowing him as Batman in the new Flash movie.
And in Beetlejuice.
Yeah, which we're going to talk about. But first, writer's strike. Scab! Scab over here, right here. See, I've been good. Alien, what Alien is really about, that whole video is improvised. Everything I'm doing lately on the channel is improvised. If you want to know, there's not a lot of news on the writer's strike. You can go through a list of all the productions that have been halted. Things like Daredevil or Blade.
What, Daredevil?
New Daredevil series, 18 episodes called Daredevil Reborn, or Born Again, is coming to Disney Plus, I think in 2024. Charlie Cox is coming back. Vincent D'Onofrio, is that how you say his name? Kingpin, he's coming back. But it looks like it's going to be sort of a soft reboot. But the production is halted because they can't write anything. And some other stuff, Blade has halted production. I think Cobra Kai. So you can go down the list. Has there been any actual forward momentum on reaching a deal? It's too early to say. Everybody is saying this is going to go at least as long as the strike in 2008. Which doesn't it feel like, look, if we all know this is going to go on for 3 months, can't we just sit down and just come to some kind of agreement right now? But you can say the same thing for war.
Yeah, I was going to say it's exactly the same thing with war. It's like, look, you know what's going to happen, but I guess you don't know what's going to happen.
Wasn't there a Star Trek episode where, I don't know, I said that as if you would know, as if you've ever watched Star Trek. Cole Schramm, wasn't there a Star Trek episode where this one society had come to this realization? So instead of fighting war, they would run the whole thing through a computer simulation. And whichever side won, they would abide by that. So a bunch of people don't have to die.
I always thought that though, right? And what would happen though is if you lose in the computer simulation, you just go to war anyway.
That's the thing. So that's the problem with these things. It's that human competitive spirit. Like if we all decided, all right, from now on, let's just work 4 days a week. Do we really need to work 5 days? And then we'd all do that. And then Daniel would be like, wait a minute, if I work 5 days, I can make Gil look bad and I can get a raise. And now I have to work 5 days to keep up with you. And, to quote Indiana Jones, it's called capitalism. That's going to be a great movie.
Will it?
So, there was one more thing on the writer's strike. I thought it would be fun to take a peek at the everyday life of a writer during the strike. What are the kind of weird things they're dealing with that is just not part of our world at all? Tuesday night, Chanel was throwing the star-studded Cruise Collection fashion show, and a lot of writers were invited to it. But here's the problem. It's being hosted on the Paramount lot. Now, It has nothing to do with Paramount, has nothing to do with a movie or show production. It just happens to be on the lot. So texts were flying fast and frenzy with people saying, hey, if I go to this Chanel thing, am I a scab? What do you think, Daniel? Where do you land on this?
Oh, I'm a hardcore picketer. Definitely a scab if you go to the Paramount property.
We would have gone. We actually had a great outfit set up. You and I were going to have a podcast table strapped over our shoulders and walk down the red carpet, podcasting while walking. It's never been done before. We all could have witnessed that Tuesday, but that's how much we believe in the writers.
Yeah.
So we skipped the Chanel Star-Studded Cruise Collection show. All right, you want to go on to... these are the appetizers before we get to the main events. And I think the main events today are going to be our thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. We're also going to talk about Beetlejuice. We watched that movie for the first time ever this week. And we'll talk about the recent news of Beetlejuice 2. But as one more hors d'oeuvre or appetizer before we get to that, there's a Netflix show that just came out about a week ago. You watched some of it. I watched all of it. It's called Sanctuary.
Oh, yeah. I was like, wait, what show did I watch?
You're like a deer in headlights. What are we talking about?
Did I have homework I was supposed to do?
This is a show that snuck up on us. It came out of Japan. Daniel, tell us about this show.
All right. It's about
sumo wrestling. No, go ahead.
It's about sumo wrestlers. It follows one main character who is a sumo wrestler who doesn't follow the traditions of sumo. And when they say that, I mean, he's a real jerk. I mean, he like bites people and like punches them. Like he really stretches the limits. But to be fair, we do also see that like the traditions of sumo, some of them are a little oppressive.
Yes. And they are... Well, one thing I didn't know about sumo wrestling is that it's a lot more violent than I realized. They will hit each other they won't punch each other, but they'll hit each other with an open palm, and they will just smack each other's faces. And that's typically how the matches start, at least based on this show. And then I went down a rabbit hole after. I did watch some sumo on YouTube. And it's similar to jujitsu, where you're trying to get trying to grapple with the other person, grab them. So it starts off with a lot of like smacking each other and trying to get a grip. It's a great show, even if you're not into sumo, and I'm not into sumo. You know, I've never seen it before, besides the one character in Street Fighter. But it's a great show, underdog spirit. It's one of those, this person you're talking about, the main character who's kind of a rebel. It's all about him discovering, learning how to take it seriously. It's a big joke to him at first, so it's a lot of fun to watch.
Do we actually feel ready to endorse the show? I mean, we're starting to see inklings that it might go downhill.
So I watched the entire first season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, after you left, we binged the rest of it. It suffers from the usual issue a lot of Netflix shows suffer from, which is they'll often have a really strong start, then there's a mid-season slump where the show kind of treads water. It clearly has too many episodes, and then it picks up a little bit more toward the end of the season. And I would say Sanctuary followed that same pattern, unfortunately. It has a lot of subplots that just don't go anywhere. The show seems to be about one thing at the start. Like you talked about how some of the traditions in sumo are a bit oppressive or maybe it's time for them to change. And it seems like that's going to be a central focus of the show. About halfway through the season, it just kind of stops being talked about. It just disappears and gets replaced with some bizarre subplots that, like I said, seem to not go anywhere. Overall, though, I thought it was worth watching. I would recommend Sanctuary. It's on Netflix. One thing that bugged me is I was watching it and I was thinking, like, maybe I want to try that. I would love to try sumo. It seems like a fun lifestyle. You get to live with a bunch of other sumo wrestlers, and every day you just wake up, you do your shiko, you train. And I realized something. I will never be a sumo wrestler. It can't happen.
It could happen. You would just have to sacrifice everything else.
But then, like you just said, sacrifice everything else. So it's like, in life, apparently you only get to do like two things. I got to do finance for a while. Now I'm a content creator. That's it. There's no sumo. And then what if I do sumo and I decide, you know what? I love Rocky. I want to be a boxer. I'm already past retirement age for a boxer. So just remember that, folks. You only get one take at all this.
Yeah, but we don't need to be so negative about it. You just said sumo. There's some elements of it that are like jujitsu. You could go to a jujitsu gym any day, Gil, and just try it out. So there's no reason to be so negative.
Alon and I actually tried doing a little sumo on each other. And so we got in our ready position and we charged at each other. But the problem is I think we share so much genetically that we both tried to do the exact same maneuver. So we came at each other like this, and our hands just hit straight on. So it was like our fingers collided with each other, and it hurt. It's like when you catch a football like this. It hurt really bad.
So that's funny. Actually, in no-gi jiu-jitsu, which is basically jiu-jitsu where you're not wearing the special outfit that you can grab, so you have to grab the person's body instead. A lot of times they end up just holding hands with each other because they're basically, you're trying to fight for grips, right? And if you hold their hand, they can't take a grip on you. But you know, when we were watching some of the actual sumo, the other thing was like, it's a brutal sport. I mean, we mentioned that, but like people just get their arms broken. Like you'll just grab the person's arm and just yank on it. And then the other thing is the platform is, at least in the fights we watch, like the platform is elevated and then there's just the audience right around it. But the whole goal of the sport seems to be to either, you know, throw the person onto their back or to throw them out of the ring. And most fights end with them getting thrown out of the ring. So why is the ring on an elevated platform with a bunch of chairs around it?
Right. There's like 6 inches between the platform and the audience. So if you go, I mean, you're going to get a large man thrown on top of you.
And these are huge guys, right? They're like 300, 400 pounds.
This is my new thing. So I've been on chimps for a while. Now I'm on sumo. So you might hear some sumo facts sprinkled throughout today's show.
Last thought on the show is, well, I guess I'm curious because you finished the season. Do you stay liking the main character? Because I know I said he was a jerk earlier, but he is really likable because he's this underdog that you can really root for. Do they maintain the focus on him throughout the season?
They do, but I talked about those subplots. It starts to cut away from him a lot more than I would like. And it felt to me by the end like cut the season in half and just get a total focus on that character and his story. I think it would have benefited from that. Is it a spoiler, Daniel, if I say whether or not the ending was satisfying?
I'm not sure, but how about like just say, hey, spoiler coming?
Yeah, I meant for you personally. Because I can warn them, but you can't. You're captive
I close
audience.
my ears.
But do you want to hear?
I kind of want to know.
Okay.
I don't think it's a spoiler to know if it's
All
satisfying.
right, so spoilers on whether or not the ending is satisfying. It's season 1, and it ends in a very unsatisfying way, I will say. It ends on a cliffhanger, and it's frustrating because the finale is half the length of all the previous episodes. So it feels like a thumb in the eye, like they so know what they're doing. And and there's not even a second season announced. That might make the blow a little softer if you're like, well, at least I know it's going to continue. So it's a bit frustrating. But if it comes back for a second season, I'll be in the audience. Want to go to Guardians of the Galaxy 3?
Yeah, do you think we said enough about Sanctuary to potentially cut that out as a clip?
Possibly.
That's why I kept trying to just add more.
Yeah, that's something very exciting for everybody out there. We have a second channel called One Take Podcast, which has been dormant for a little while. I think I'm going to rename it to One Take Clips. And then this live stream will be chopped up and we'll put the clips over there. Because then like Cole Schramm or MJ, if you're like, I want to hear their thoughts on Guardians, but I don't care about all these other topics, go over there. We'll have the clip ready for you. What more could you ask for?
Nothing more.
All right, moving on to the next topic. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This is the conclusion to the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. It's interesting how the MCU has generally developed into this format of trilogies. You had a Captain America trilogy, an Iron Man trilogy. Thor kind of broke the mold by going into Love and Thunder, a 4th movie. And I'll leave it up to you to decide if that was a good idea or a bad idea. But James Gunn definitely went into Guardians 3 wanting to make the conclusion to his trilogy, especially because this is his final bow before he goes to take over the DCU. Along with Peter Safran. People forget that. It's co-leads of the DC universe. But no one really knows who Peter Safran is because he's just a producer or something. James Gunn gets it done. He directs, he writes. Safran's probably a great guy. Anyway, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Daniel, what were your thoughts on the movie?
I loved it. I thought it was awesome. It's the first MCU movie, and let me give all the qualifiers. First MCU movie in a long time that was actually good. But I've always had a soft spot for Guardians of the Galaxy. I loved the first movie. The second was like okay, but I've always loved all the characters. And yeah, I thought it was an awesome movie. I thought it was very heartfelt and like really tugged at me, tugged at my heartstrings.
Thank you for clarifying.
And I mean, so many scenes still stick with me. And I've also always had a soft spot for Rocket in particular. So I think the movie was like really well suited for me to like it a lot. But I just keep replaying just the very first scene of that movie in my head of Rocket walking around like sad, listening to Creep.
What I loved about that scene is that he wasn't singing every lyric. He would just chime in here and there, which felt very real.
Yeah.
When you're listening to music, you kind of start mumbling a little bit. You can't help it. It just creeps out, if you will. I remember my initial reaction to the first Guardians of the Galaxy. One thing I really liked about it is that it felt different from the other Marvel movies. It was like this could have just been a movie, not a MCU movie. I will say on rewatch, sometimes I don't feel that quite as much. Once you start getting into the big CGI battles, it starts to feel like there's a movie that I like, and then there are the parts of it that feel like, oh, it's more MCU. Which is it's just, once you've seen it so many times, it starts to feel a little bit old. But Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 definitely gave me some of that feeling again. I loved how much it leaned into the darkness, how much it took itself seriously. One of my biggest pet peeves with these movies is when it starts to get serious and then you undercut it with a joke. Most recent example, Shang-Chi, when he's describing all the training he went through. And I was like, all right, I'm finally getting into this. I'm seeing like the underdog is getting stronger. And then Aquafina interrupts and you cut from the flashback to some goofy joke where the flight attendant is like, so do you want the meat or the vegetarian? And she's like, well, I'll have the meat. And she's like, well, we're all out of meat. And she's like, okay, well, I'll have the vegetarian. Then she's like, how about you? Do you want the meat or the vegetarian? And she's like, well, I'll have the vegetarian because there is no meat. Daniel, calm down. You can't laugh so hard into the mic. You'll blow our eardrums out. So this movie, I think for the most part, didn't do that. When it was being serious, it stuck with it. I felt feelings. I haven't done that in a long time. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think I did see a lot of criticism saying that the darker, more emotional scenes got undercut with humor. And I actually didn't feel that way during the movie. And maybe I would feel differently on a rewatch as well. But I felt like they allowed the really serious moments to linger somewhat. And then they added in the humor and stuff that made it feel more like, like a fun roller coaster, which these types of movies feel like.
There was one moment, and I guess let's announce now, spoilers. Let's free ourselves to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Spoiler alert! There is one moment I remember that it was a pretty serious moment, and it definitely gets cut off by a joke. And that's when they're wearing their goofy, different colored spacesuits, and Peter is talking to alternate reality Gamora, and basically pleading with her, like, I think if you open up your heart, if we give this a chance. And then they get interrupted where they're like, this is an open line. And everybody could hear their conversation. It didn't bother me, though, because we stuck with the moment long enough. It's literally a question of, do we get to experience the drama long enough to its conclusion before it gets cut off by a joke? And I felt like we sat in that moment for the right amount of time. So it didn't bug me.
That actually brings up one question I've been debating, which is, does Peter Quill's character arc get too stilted in this movie, right? Because we have so much focus on Rocket. And it's kind of interesting because, well, I guess that's sort of the whole point of Guardians of the Galaxy. All the characters, they're all kind of struggling with the same thing, which is like, how do they find their place in the galaxy, right? And that's why they all suit each other, right? Because they can be like a family. But Peter Quill at the beginning of the movie, right, is like drunk and depressed in a similar way to Rocket because he lost Gamora. And I mean, I think he goes through somewhat of a transformation through the movie, right, of a kind of trying to get Gamora back and it doesn't work, but he feels again the sense of family with the Guardians. And then I guess right at the end of the movie, he decides to go back to like his grandpa. But I guess my question for you is like, all the elements of a good arc are there for him, but did he feel too sidelined for you to emotionally connect with it?
Yeah, I remember what I felt during the movie is, I'll say that the conclusions for all the characters landed. So it got to a point where emotionally it worked for me. But I do remember thinking this movie was guilty of something a lot of season or series finales are guilty of, which is you get to the end and you realize, wait a minute, we didn't plant any seeds that we can now bring to a conclusion. So we have to quickly plant some seeds at the beginning of this movie so it can feel like there's a conclusion. And in this case, it was, Peter, you abandoned your grandfather. You haven't seen him in 30 years. And I was like, that's true, but it's never been brought up until now. So it felt like we quickly introduced there's this need Peter has had all along. And at the end of the movie, he's going to go and fulfill it. I will say, like I said, in the moment, it worked for me. Maybe it's just they used the right music. The actor, Chris Pratt, he sold it and it just landed. But in retrospect, and even during the movie, I was like, it's true. He hasn't seen his grandpa, but like, how come nobody brought it up until right now?
But at least it's a good point, but at least thematically it fits very well. Like it makes sense. His character is this like lost boy traveling through the galaxy.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. Thematically, it does fit. It's just the logistics of how you bring that theme to its conclusion felt a little messy, I guess.
I'll even a little more support for it too is, well, maybe it never came up because that's the type of thing that character has been running away from, right? And ignoring. But I guess you're right. Then you would expect the characters around him to like have brought it up previously. Yeah.
And the thing is, they really wouldn't have brought it up though, because who's close enough with Peter to bring it up? Mantis would bring it up, but she's only recently gotten closer with them. And by the way, they're brother and sister, which is also a funny thing. Yeah, see,
I totally forget about that.
It barely played into things, which was kind of weird.
Oh, that's so funny.
It wasn't revealed until the holiday special, where that's kind of the conclusion of the holiday special. She's like, I'm your sister. And he's like, that's the greatest gift of all. Now I have family. And then they mention it a couple of times in this movie, but it sort of fades away. Like, it would have been nice if before Peter went to Earth, he was like, let's keep in touch, sister. Let's support each other or something. MJ chimes in. He says, I felt that was somewhat set up in the earlier movies. It's talking about Peter and his grandfather running away from Earth. So, hey, I'm going to rewatch the movie tomorrow. So I'll see if that changes my feelings at all. You never know which way that's going to go, because Spider-Man No Way Home, loved it on first viewing. One of the best theatrical experiences I've had in a long time. When I rewatched it later on, I was like, oh, there's some dumb stuff in this. A lot of just really goofy humor that doesn't land. So we'll see which way this movie goes. I released a video just yesterday asking the question, was this movie emotionally manipulative? Because that's a phrase I saw a lot of people throwing around. And I think the general complaint is sort of twofold. It's one, that it's using the oldest trick in the book of showing cute animals in harm's way. So it's just an easy way to get people to feel bad. It's kind of cheating. And two, there were a lot of near-death fake-outs. Did that jive with you at all? Did you feel that way?
I did not feel emotionally manipulated at all.
Wait, and just so we can earn the title of this video. Yeah, I saw the movie, and I was like, that's a great movie. And then I went online and saw maybe it wasn't that good. Maybe I was emotionally manipulated. And I started to wonder, did James Gunn gaslight me? Was I gaslighted by Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? Think about it.
And the answer is?
I don't think so.
Yeah, neither do I.
Yeah, there was I don't want to repeat everything I said in that video, but I was curious to get your thoughts. The one moment that did bug me in terms of sort of manipulating us was the Drax scene where they're on the weird biology planet. Drax gets shot a couple of times. We go into slow motion and it feels like they're setting up. He might die right now. And then it kind of felt like, move on. He's actually totally fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that was the only one. And for me, it just kind of passed by quickly anyway. The rest of the movie, I felt like the stakes remained. And I didn't feel like I was being emotionally manipulated. I felt like I was being told a compelling story. Like, I thought the story of Rocket and his other animal friends is just like a super compelling story with a good payoff at the end. And that's like what movies are.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I saw one comment kind of in response to my video that asked, what was the point of all those near-death moments, like all those fake outs? And I think you're using the word fake out, and that means for you, it went too far. But the point of them is suspense and drama, right? Someone's almost dying and we save them. But I guess if it goes too far, you might feel like it was a fake out, like you were essentially lied to. The example I gave in the video is a character shoots, you think someone is killed, but the camera pans over, actually they missed. So it feels like the movie lied to you, because in the story, nobody was shot. But because the camera was pointed the wrong way, it seemed like maybe they were. So that's some of the subjectivity, is how much for you is too much. Where
Yeah.
do you feel like it kind of breaks your immersion of the movie?
Yeah, and they didn't go too far for me because I still felt the stakes the whole time. When Star-Lord is drifting between the two ships, I actually thought there was a chance he was going to die.
Especially the way he's getting all puffed up
Yeah,
and everything.
and then when Groot extends his branches, I'm like, oh, thank God, like Groot's gonna save him. And then his branches start freezing up in the cold of space. Like I thought he wasn't gonna make it, and so it worked for me. Now maybe some other people didn't buy that.
Right. Alun's been, he's not on with us today, but he's been, I don't know why I pointed over there. He's not over there.
He's over there.
Oh. He's been kind of dropping little complaints to me the last few days since we saw it. Like, and another thing. And he was kind of annoyed in that scene that the person who saved Peter was Adam Warlock.
Oh, I liked that a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, because I think that's thematically, again, it fits really well, which is the whole point of the Guardians of the Galaxy, is it's these misfits who find family in each other. And Adam Warlock is like an artificially created person.
He's a man baby.
Yeah. Again, he really has no home, right? He doesn't really, even his like mother, right, uses him to complete missions for this psychopath creator of theirs, the High Evolutionary. And he goes through this, I thought, a great redemption arc where, yeah, like he redeems himself by saving Star-Lord, and then he gets to join the Guardians. I thought that's an awesome arc. Wow. How can Alun complain about this? What the hell?
It's not fair because he can't defend himself. I'll get quotes from him, and I'll bring them back next time to give his rebuttal.
But I was just gonna say it's a classic Guardians of the Galaxy type arc. I think it's great.
So I think the movie is sort of a celebration of family, friends, and the way that we support each other. So you create this character who's an empty shell. Adam Warlock doesn't know anything, and you sort of present these two alternate paths where they try to drill into him, like, you work for us, you do these evil missions, but he can't deny the positivity that comes from family, and ultimately he ends up choosing that path. And I think that's a great way to sort of celebrate it, because you say, even if you try to hammer the bad stuff into somebody, ultimately they're going to choose the good stuff because it's better.
Yeah.
Can't we all just get along? We don't have to fight. Just use a computer simulation. See who's going to win. Oh, I shouldn't make references to things we talked about too early, because then in the clip it won't work.
Oh shoot.
Yeah.
We can like splice
This is
in,
over.
We can splice in like a do 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 a
Yeah,
flashback.
do a flashback. That was another complaint I heard from Alun, which is that he didn't like constantly flashing back to the Rocket story. He was like, it would have been better if we just saw the whole thing at the beginning.
I completely disagree. I really liked it being spliced in with the flashbacks. I guess the one thing I wonder, like structurally, is did the flashbacks follow the arc of the overall story? And I kind of think they did. Like both stories sort of reached a climax around the same time, right?
Yeah, that's one thing I have to wonder. I mean, they definitely I think they reached a climax around the same time. So at least logistically, in terms of the things that are happening, like when you reach the important part of the story, it happens in both. But it's a good question of thematically or logistically, does it make sense where we're flashing back? Meaning, does it make sense that in that moment a character would be thinking about what happened, so we flash back to it? Or thematically, are they giving us relevant information, as it's relevant while the story is proceeding? I don't really remember. I definitely didn't feel distracted by jumping back, but I'll pay more attention to that on my rewatch tomorrow. I remember the one thing I didn't like about the flashbacks is that when we cut back to the present, it would do this effect where it would flash white for a second and be like, shoo, which just, I don't know why, it felt very TV to me. Like, I remember Angel used to do that a lot, that TV show. It would be like, before it cuts to another scene. And it reminded me of that, and that distracted me a little.
Yeah.
Apolock asks, does James Gunn have too much cultural influence nowadays? Or has he tapped into what the masses will pay to watch? I don't get the feel that he has too much cultural influence. I'll say if he takes over the DC universe and it ends up turning into garbage, then I'll say he had too much cultural influence. But I see people making a comparison between him and Zack Snyder because Zack Snyder did end up sort of growing a cult of personality around him, released a Snyder cut. Some people, I'm not saying this, I might be saying it, but some people have said that at least a portion of that fandom got a little toxic and were a problem. So could the same thing happen with James Gunn? I think it's too early to say. I say he's gaining a following, he's gaining influence, but I think he's also earning it. So we'll see if it goes awry.
Yeah, I would also say I think he's, at least for me, I think he tapped into a really good theme where I think there's a lot of directors could have tapped into more superficial themes of just like, it's good to have like literally in Guardians, they said like at one point, it's good to have friends, right? Now you could go for like a really cliche, just like it's good to have friends. But I actually thought this movie did a good job of having a slightly more complex, deeper theme, which is like what makes these people friends with each other is the fact that they're good people. Like they want good things for each other and for the world. And I think that's great, right? Whereas like the High Evolutionary hates Rocket because of how smart he is, right? And it's a good foil to no, like him and his friends like each other because they like the good things about each other. And so I thought, I don't know, I think that's a really good, deep, heartfelt theme that I think is missing in a lot of movies.
There's a lot of cynicism, I would definitely say, in our culture, and definitely in the MCU nowadays. I also think, so he's presenting themes that we like in that I don't get sick of seeing. I talked about this in my Creed 3 video, but the underdog story never gets old. And it's a positive message to hear. You can achieve something if you try hard, don't give up, etc. That's a message that's worth giving a fresh coat of paint every once in a while and sort of representing. That's not necessarily the message that James Gunn is using, but that's just an example of it's good to hear positive things over and over. It's sort of the good side of brainwashing us. I think he also has tapped into a unique tone. Like he does the blending of comedy, action, and drama in a unique way that not everybody else does. And especially in the MCU, it's hard to have a unique voice. I feel like people complain that every movie is the same. Obviously, that's not true. They're not all the same, but tonally, they're all very similar. And if you watch Multiverse of Madness, there are a few scenes that stand out as like, those are the Sam Raimi scenes. But the rest of them feel like, okay, now we're in generic Marvel mode. You know what I mean? So it's hard to kind of pierce through that and stand out as unique. And I think James Gunn does that, which is part of why he's earned the cultural influence that he has. I had a question for you about Guardian. Oh yeah, what did you think about the moment where Rocket goes to heaven for a second?
I was literally just thinking about that scene. Okay, I think so. He goes to heaven, right, and he sees his old friends, right. In particular, he talks to the otter, Lila, yeah. And it felt the one part of that scene that annoyed me and was a little silly was when she tells him, what was it that she tells him? It was
your story all along.
Yeah, that it just felt jarring. Like just to say that, where I was like, are we breaking the fourth wall or something? Like what's going on? I think it was more like you are a main character in your story. You matter, right? Like emotionally, that's what I felt like that's supposed to mean. But the phrasing was just so odd.
It was too, unfortunately, it aligned perfectly with what was happening on the meta level of this movie, which is that Rocket has suddenly become the main character. So to then have a character say, Rocket, it's your story. It has been the whole time. It feels like breaking the fourth wall, even if it isn't literally. But even to say thematically it makes sense and it fits, you're sort of trying to piece it together. It doesn't feel obvious that it does.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I'll pay attention to in my rewatch tomorrow.
But one thing I did like about that scene, and now I can't remember if I'm making this up or not, I don't think I am, is, well, I think Rocket clearly, he carries a lot of guilt with him. Like a lot of survivor's guilt, right? Mm-hmm. Which is the fact that he survived and they didn't, right? In his escape, his 3 friends get killed. And I think when he sees her in heaven, like he says to her something like, I failed you, right? And then she tells him like, no, you didn't.
Possibly, I don't remember.
Am I making this up?
I remember him saying he wants to stay and she's like, not yet.
I really feel like he shows, I think I'll have to rewatch it. Maybe I made this up. If they didn't do this in the movie,
this week's edition of Daniel can't remember the thing he's trying to remember.
They should have done this in the movie if they didn't, where he basically tells them, like, look, I failed. Like, I wish I could have saved you, right? And she tells him, like, it's okay. Like, you did the best you could. I I felt like that was powerful if that actually happened.
First off, you're a scab because you're suggesting rewrites, which would be totally inappropriate right now. What did you understand this, by the way? I'm going to blow your mind right now. When Groot at the end of the movie says, "I love you guys."
Yeah, he didn't actually say that. We're just hearing him.
Yeah,
because
as we
we've been with
saw,
him.
Gamora learned to understand Groot shockingly fast. Can I say that? It was pretty fast that she picked up on it. And now at the end of the movie, we have also learned to understand Groot. So he said, "I am Groot," but we heard, "I love you guys."
So that brings up a question I had, which is Gamora goes through somewhat of a transformation in this movie, right? Now, she doesn't go back to her old self. She still stays with the Ravagers instead of with Peter Quill. But does she, like, at one point, she goes to save them, right? Like, and she didn't need to do that, right? She comes with the ship, I think, to save the rest of the heroes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So,
Yeah, there's definitely a transformation where she's pretty cold toward them. And then, yes, later on in the movie, she goes out of her way to help them, for sure.
do you buy that?
Yeah, I bought that. We already know that she has it inside her to be good because we saw it from her alternate timeline. And yeah, I think she was moved by the way that they were going out on a limb for each other. I don't know. I remember in the moment I bought it.
Yeah, I think so. I guess for me, she started out so cold and mean. It was just like a little far.
Yeah,
Like she was very mean at the beginning.
that's true. Though who wouldn't be? I mean, it's kind of creepy that it's to meet your boyfriend from another timeline. And you just have, which I found kind of weird that everyone kept asking her, like, "You really don't remember a thing." How could she remember anything? It didn't happen in her reality. Maybe it's just sort of an emotional thing. Like, you look exactly like her. Maybe there's one of those, I've seen movies where the timelines will kind of cross and you might remember something from another timeline. Like, is that happening to you, Gamora?
Yeah, that's the subtext when they ask, "You really don't remember?"
That would be like, "I am Groot." And he's saying everything I just said.
Yeah.
Anything else, Daniel, on Guardians 3?
Wait, I jotted down a couple notes. Let me see if I had anything else.
You wrote some note. Okay, I'll stop.
I jotted them down.
stop calling you a
That's
scab.
not writing. Okay, yeah. The only other thing I was wondering about is people say that like the heist scene, right, where they go to that like organic space station, was filler, and I was debating what does it even mean for something to be filler, right? I guess it's filler if it doesn't progress the plot in a meaningful way or progress like the theme or the characters.
Right.
Did it fail to do any of those things?
Yeah, I feel like I have to rewatch it because I don't remember all the beats of that scene. Like, I remember Peter and Gamora talking and it gets cut off by, "It's an open line." I remember Nathan Fillion. I remember the Drax almost dying scene. I mean, at minimum, it was one more chance for Gamora to see, look how much everyone here works together.
Yeah, also she gets to be impressed by Peter Quill because he makes
true.
he claims he could figure things out with his charm, right? By charming that one woman there.
Yeah.
And he does, right? And I think that impresses Gamora, and I think that's important to their relationship.
And he kind of shows that he's not as dumb as he looks.
Yeah.
He's like, "If I could just get them a message." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm not that stupid. I just needed to override the security protocols." And yeah, how does he know how to do that? Like, it's an alien computer you've never seen before. But anyway.
So I don't really think it's filler. I think it made sense in the plot. It was generally an entertaining scene. I would say what felt to me more like filler was just like a lot of the action in the last like 30 minutes of the movie. I think the movie should have just been like 30 minutes shorter. It just started to drag a little bit. Although at least some of the action scenes were more interesting and engaging than the MCU usually is.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, especially when we were doing some of the cool, almost first-person perspective as they were, Groot's arms shooting out, and a lot of these things where they presented it as though it was one fluid take, sort of.
One thought, as I was watching that, I was like, wait, some of this action is like very gruesome. Like they're like shoving, like swords or like projectiles through like multiple aliens at once and gutting them and all this
There
stuff.
was the moment when they were bringing all the animals onto the ship a monkey jumps onto this woman and just starts scratching at her face like crazy.
That was really messed
Like,
up.
she's dead. That's the new high evolutionary you just created. At best, you just made a new high evolutionary. At worst, she's dead.
No. But they got those Zap Pack things they could put over her face now. It'll heal her.
I love that. They introduced that. They need to use it for Rocket, and then suddenly you see them everywhere. Like, this technology has been around, but we just never saw it until now. I thought that was pretty funny.
But just the point about the gruesomeness, though, is, yeah, just make all the bad guys aliens so that you can do these really gruesome, disgusting things. Because if they look like humans,
I think
you
that's
can't do
what
that.
Ninja Turtles did for the video game. It's like, you're not killing people, you're killing robots that look like people. It's okay. The movie got pretty gruesome, though. Like, you actually saw the high evolutionary without his face on. I was surprised they actually showed that to us. You had your first F-bomb in MCU history. And I thought it was pretty funny. It landed.
What was it again?
So that's where Nebula and Peter get in the car, and Nebula can't figure out how to open the door. And she's like, okay, I'm pushing the button. Now what do I do? And he's like, now open the fucking door.
That's funny. Yeah, that was good.
I think that was an improvised line. They were just sort of messing around, and they were like, let's keep it in. Screw it. James Gunn doesn't care anymore. It's his last movie. Senioritis. His last movie anyway. Okay, I do have one complaint. See, it's funny because we went into this review with the mode of like, we're defending this movie, not against haters, against people who were like, I liked it, but I had a few problems with it.
Yeah. I really feel like I'm defending it against lukewarm reviews.
Right. But one thing I can't stand in Star Wars movies or other sci-fi movies, when you blow up a planet, it's really hard to comprehend the scale of what you've just done. Like, every atrocity that's ever been committed in the history of our history, it's worse than that, because you have killed not one group of people, not several. You have killed everyone.
All right,
children.
Let me fix this for you. He
They
created.
weren't people; they were animals.
Whoa. Gil, how could you say such a thing? No, let me defend it because, first of all, the timeline doesn't make any sense, right?
I know.
How old is Rocket?
Yeah, how long do raccoons live? I don't know.
So anyway, like, I don't know, max, maybe it's been a few decades or something. And somehow he's created these the high evolutionaries created these like complex societies on this counter Earth planet. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. So the way I'll defend it is he actually didn't build out a whole planet of people. It was just like that one town.
Okay, it was just one town, and the rest of Contra Earth was empty. Okay, see,
And it was like 40 people, and it's tragic, but it was like 40 people.
you know, there was a
Or to quote Stalin,
okay.
one death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic. That might not have been like perfectly verbatim, but there you go. That's the other way to defend
And that
it.
was your Daniel's Bits history corner for the week.
Yeah, we forgot to cue the music.
Yeah, I remember thinking, why didn't you just make one of these animal hybrid things? See if they're to your liking. And then if not, you can kill the one. But instead, he's like, let's fill a whole planet. Wait a minute, they suck. All right, destroy it. Let's start over.
Well, to be fair, the how much they suck could be an emergent property of them having a complex society, right? You might not know.
That's true, yeah.
I like also the sign that it sucks is the fact that there's like drug dealing going on.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, like there's also like, you know, people getting beaten and robbed, and so it's all the things we would think of as like being wrong with society. So that's fair. But it was just funny seeing these like anthropomorphized creatures like dealing drugs.
MJ, by the way, says, makes sense. The one town theory. The one town theory, brought to you by One Take, has been endorsed by MJ.
And if anybody else on YouTube talks about the one town theory without giving proper credits to One Take, we'll see you in court.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? Do you want me to stop asking you that? I always get to the end of a topic and I'm like, any other thoughts?
No, I like when you ask me
You do?
that.
Okay, I don't
I
know.
have more thoughts.
All right, cool. So, more thoughts?
No, I think we've covered it. I think it was a great movie. Yeah, it was awesome.
So the one thing in terms of the future now, so I am curious to see what happens with these characters. So my impression is this is the last time we will see that team of Guardians. It's possible there'll be another Guardians movie with the newly formed team, and they end by saying the legendary Star-Lord will return. So of course we'll see Peter Quill again. I'm curious what that's going to look like without James Gunn's involvement. Will they turn Quill into a blithering idiot who punches a mad titan, thereby threatening the entire multiverse? Though counter argument to that, Doctor Strange said there's only one possible timeline where we win. And that has to be the one where Peter punches Thanos. But maybe if he didn't punch Thanos, there could have been, I mean, it was determinism? Get out of here.
I guess it is sort of determinism. Well, no, because there's all these different timelines you could end up in. They just happen to be in this one timeline.
Right. The future. So we talked about the future of the Guardians in the MCU. I'm more interested, I'm always more excited by the filmmakers behind the stuff because they're the ones who will assure you there's going to be quality. Like if you liked Guardians 3, you might be, oh, I'm excited to see more Guardians. Or if you're like me, I'm excited to follow James Gunn to see what he does next. And the one question I have is he has created this sort of unique tone, but I feel like that's all I've seen him do. Can he get outside of that? I believe his next movie is going to, or definitely the first movie coming in the new DCU, and it's going to be written and directed by James Gunn. It's going to be Superman Legacy. To me, that movie should not, or at least I would prefer it not have the same tone as Suicide Squad or Guardians of the Galaxy. So can he give us a different tone? Have humor in it, for sure, but don't make it a comedy. Because I would say Guardians, Suicide Squad, they often function by the rules of a comedy, where you don't quite feel like you're watching a version of the real world. You're watching something that takes place in like a Will Ferrell or Adam Sandler movie, almost. So can he stray from that tone? That's my question, and we'll find out in a few years.
Gil, before we shift topics, I got to run to the bathroom.
Okay. Go ahead. I'll vamp in the meantime. So when he gets back, I'll tell you what's coming up next. This is very exciting. Beetlejuice. We're going to talk about seeing the first movie for the first time ever. I'm really curious to hear Daniel's thoughts because to me, the movie did not feel like one that would be up his alley. He's not a horror guy. And I wouldn't really describe Beetlejuice as a horror. It's clearly a horror comedy, leaning more into comedy, bringing in some elements from horror, which to me, that's I love that stuff. That's like chocolate and peanut butter to me. But we'll see how Daniel feels about it. What am I working on? It's a great question. So I just came out with what Alien is really about. In terms of the What Blank is Really About series, I'm trying to decide what's next. I was working on one going back to the original Evil Dead trilogy as sort of a follow-up from Evil Dead Rise, but I'm kind of battling between, is it too late? Has the hype sort of passed? Maybe I should come back to those movies at a later date. And I'm not sure if I'm still interested. You know, I rewatched all the movies. I was really hyped about it. And now I might feel ready for the next thing. So we'll see. I'm always open to suggestion on that. People leave in the comments suggestions of what blank is really about, or WERBAs, as we call them here, what WERBAs they want to see next. And I am keeping a list. So keep leaving those comments. I'll add them to the list and get to them at some point. And by the way, if you're sick of seeing us all the time, you're like, my eyes need a break. Okay? What about my ears? Show my ears some love. Check the description. Check the pinned comment. I'll give all the links where you can find this on any podcast app. Apple, Spotify, etc. MJ suggests Minority Report. That one's on the list. You can pretty much rest assured that any good sci-fi movie is probably on the list, but keep them coming. Apolock asks, have you watched the series from the writers of Lost? Daniel, I'm going to throw that question at you.
No.
Yeah, me neither. Apolock, is that a good show? Tell us about that show. Should we watch it? All right, let's go into Daniel. Here we go. Ready?
Would you like more coffee?
Oh, sure. I like this. This is like radio where between songs you have banter, but instead here it's banter between topics, which will then become one-take clips.
Maybe we could even get some shorts.
Possibly. Beetlejuice. Hey, I'm Beetlejuice here. I'm here to talk about my movie, Beetlejuice.
How could you say it 3 times?
I know, we're screwed. We've never seen Beetlejuice before this week. We finally watched it for the first time ever. Daniel, why did you miss out on Beetlejuice? Have you ever even heard of this movie until now?
So I actually did see Beetlejuice when I was a kid, but I remember nothing about it. We watched it in camp when I was like in elementary school. And so as I was watching it this week, I was like, This is not a kids movie.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, well, I wouldn't say not at all. There are definitely elements of it which would appeal to children, but there's stuff for a PG movie that would not be in a PG movie today.
Yeah, there are a lot, and I wrote some of them down. There are some jokes that would not be in PG movies normally.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. If they make, well, it's confirmed that there's Beetlejuice 2 on the way, but they will have to, they're going to have to change the Beetlejuice character, I feel like. There are certain things he did in that movie I really don't think would fly today. I mean, they didn't fly back then. They shouldn't have done it then either. But today, they're definitely going to have to change it, I think. So I'd never seen it. I saw pieces of it on TV when I was a kid. I didn't really know much about it. And I'd always wanted to watch it, and for some reason I never did. So this week, when they officially announced the release date for Beetlejuice 2, I figured now's the time to go back and watch it. So I'm very curious. I was telling the folks at home that I was very curious to hear your thoughts, because to me, this felt like, I know you're not into horror. This isn't really a horror, but it definitely has elements of it meshed with comedy. I just don't know where it would land for you.
I enjoyed parts of it, but I was mostly bored because there was nothing to really draw me in that much. In that I didn't feel emotionally connected to any of the characters. Like, I felt like for the couple, right, who become ghosts, I felt like you could have built up some real emotional stakes, right, of them trying to like find their place in the afterlife. And they do, right? Like they find that role. Spoilers for Beetlejuice 1. I think that's okay.
Yeah.
By the end of the movie, right, they get to be parents. And at the beginning, they talked about how they wanted to try to have kids again, right? So they had set up this idea that they've like failed to have kids, right? That maybe they tried and they couldn't have any kids, and then they die. All these dreams are lost. You know, they lose their home, but then they end up getting to find a happy life in the afterlife as parents to this girl. And she also, you know, she was always this weird girl. Now she finds a place in the world too. And like those elements were there, but I didn't feel emotionally bought in at all, which meant like I just didn't care and was kind of bored. So then, okay, what's the other thing to draw me in is, like just seeing interesting stuff, right? There's just kind of like wonky, interesting things going on in the afterlife, but I didn't find like that wasn't that interesting to me either. Like I'm just seeing weird things without any real, I don't know, underlying principles for me to like learn about the afterlife. It's just like, here's a bunch of weird stuff. And then here's this weird, honestly kind of annoying character of Beetlejuice, who I just was like, I just didn't want him in the movie. Like I just found him so annoying and just gross to look at. So I don't know, like the movie did some interesting things, but overall I just kind of felt like I had to fight my way through it.
Wow. So this movie has a nearly 40-year-old legacy, but Daniel's coming into town to set the record straight. I agree with some of what you said. I do think the first maybe 20 minutes of the movie set up a really interesting premise. And I love the way they slowly realize they're dead. They're like, I don't think we survived. And they find the book for the recently deceased. And I love there's that one throwaway joke where he's like, a handbook for the recently diseased. And she's like, not diseased, deceased. I'm like, there were a couple of jokes like that in the movie where I'm like, it's just a person being dumb for a second. But it made me laugh. And I think that is the big question. The movie primarily functions as a comedy. I found the movie pretty funny. I didn't find the Beetlejuice character annoying, actually. I thought, especially the way he's playing against really straight-laced people, and he just comes in so bombastic, I found him funny. Honestly, some of the difference might have been that you watched it by yourself.
Yeah.
And I feel like comedies definitely work better with a group. So I was watching with a couple of other people, and we were all laughing together. Like that first scene of Beetlejuice on the TV, and he's just like yelling into the camera, come on down. I couldn't even hear half of what he said.
So that I found really funny, and him calling himself a bio-exorcist.
That's a hilarious idea.
That is hilarious. So yeah, upon reflection, I think I'm ignoring, like I did laugh a lot during the movie, and I think that's a little unfair to like forget. Like the bio-exorcist joke, I was laughing a ton. His whole TV ad was just so funny.
Yeah, or when the football players, like, hey, I don't think we survived. He's like, you think? It's like, how could you have been in the dead people waiting room with all these living corpses around you? And you're like, it takes you a day to be like, I don't know if we're alive, actually.
And then the idea that the afterlife has this like really inefficient bureaucracy, like the afterlife is just administered by like a really bad DMV. Like that's a really funny idea.
Yeah, so I found all that stuff really funny.
Yeah.
But I do think narratively, the movie is a complete mess.
Yeah.
I'll completely agree with that. I think Tim Burton elevates the movie with all of that weird stuff, done a lot with practical effects, which just automatically makes it more interesting to me because you just feel that real presence and you think somebody made that with their hands. Hey, not to put down CGI. I mean, that stuff is really impressive, but we've just seen so much of it.
Yeah.
It eventually wears off. So I enjoyed the movie on that front. Really fun, really funny. And it's also a unique brand of funny because you have that weird, unsettling surrealism of people realizing they're no longer alive and trying to navigate the afterlife. But then everyone has this nonchalant attitude. Like, yeah, we're dead, whatever. Like, oh, yeah, there's a ghost in the house. How can we profit off this? Like,
Yeah.
nobody's scared. So that's not something I've seen that much of, which is surprising considering how old the movie is. So sometimes classic movies you've never seen suffer a little because they've invented some new things that have since become cliches. And then unfairly, that movie suffers, even though if you had seen it first, you would have thought this is really unique. But the uniqueness of this movie had not been worn off. It did not wear off for me. And part of that might be because it's been a long time since I've seen a Tim Burton movie.
I'm increasingly feeling guilty for my rant against this movie at the beginning because like we keep bringing up things and I'm like, oh, that actually was like really
See,
funny.
I knew you were going to go hard at the movie, but I knew if I went first, I would accidentally change your mind. That's why I wanted you to go first.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'm going to make this look worse by cutting the video and reversing it. So it looks like after all this, you're still like, okay, all right, Gil, let me tell you, this movie sucked, okay? Michael Keaton, great actor, annoying, shut up. An example of this movie being really messy, just all of a sudden, it's about Beetlejuice trying to marry Lydia.
Yeah.
And then now it's like, we have to stop this wedding. And then at the end of the movie, Lydia gets home and she's like, I got an A. Can we do that thing we talked about? And the thing she wanted was to, I guess, dance while floating.
Yeah. Which they introduced earlier in the movie because they did it at the dinner party, making everyone dance.
True. It just, I can't, would a 15-year-old or however old she is really think like, I'm going to work hard in school. I'm going to get an A so I can dance while floating. Because she could dance anytime she wants, but she wants to float dance with a football team ghosts behind her.
Yeah.
Yeah?
That was my dream when I was 16.
It's still my dream. In fact, I'm offended that you are crapping all over my float dance dream. I mean, if we get a harness and a wire, we could probably make that happen for you. Hey, sign up for the One Take Patreon. Help find Daniel's dream. He needs this. Look at him. What else does he have? Doesn't even like Beetlejuice. Do you think there's any real kind of satire or meaning to this movie?
I was going to ask you that actually, because you have this this family. I was going to call them yuppies, but they're not yuppies because they're not up and coming. Like they're already rich and stuff. I mean, they're definitely. I think there's some satire of sort of the meaninglessness of their lives, right? Of the wife is like this bad sculpturist and she's got this agent and she wants to think like she's this like really important artist and she's gonna like create a whole artsy community in this neighborhood, right? And it's just like very goofy and silly. So I think they're like making fun of that. The husband is like just any way to make a profit, right? He's like, I could buy up this whole town. These dumb townsfolk don't know the value of their real estate, right? I feel like it's just poking fun at the absurdity of these people's like desires.
Right, and then you contrast that with the dead couple, and I guess they find real meaning by becoming essentially adoptive parents to Lydia.
Yeah.
Did you get the impression, by the way, that the conclusion is that they've basically become her parents, and her biological parents are like living in the attic now? Like they've become the ghosts? I looked that up. I asked ChatGPT. I was like, are they living in the attic now? And it was like, there's no evidence in the movie of their revised living situation. But that was my impression.
I didn't follow particularly like the attic point, but like they did kind of take over as the main parents with the
kind of weird.
Yeah, with the original parents being like there's still someone involved, right? Because you hear them like one of them goes like, "Oh, I guess she got an A," because they hear her like singing and stuff.
I'm gonna rewatch that scene. I think they're living in the attic now. Like, they have become the ghosts. That's the impression I got. MJ, are you going to weigh in here? Look, I'm looking like an idiot up here. Like, I don't even know this movie. MJ says that she would want to float dance because she's weird, as you said.
Hey, I'm not weird.
Well, that was another thing I found out is like, well, maybe I misread this, but she has the goth aesthetic, which I took as an aesthetic choice that she likes. But at the end of the movie, did she kind of ditch a lot of that? Like, she wasn't wearing the hat anymore. Now she was like hanging out with people. And it kind of seemed like the movie was teaching you, stop being weird, all right? Be normal. Go hang out with people, get good grades. It was sort of anti-Tim Burton.
Well, one could potentially...
Wait, Guy Incognito, by the way. He hasn't seen the movie, but he agrees. Guy, that's why you're Guy Incognito. All right, go ahead, Daniel.
I was going to say maybe the movie could take a position that like the goth aesthetic and stuff is a little antisocial in that like when you kind of dress up that way, you're kind of telling people you're different, and maybe it does make it harder to become like friends. And so maybe the point is she's been able now to embrace some more pro-social behavior and aesthetics that will allow her to make friends, but she still has an outlet for her unique personality, which is like having these ghost parents. And so maybe it's talking about like a way to find belonging in the world.
You notice all the conversation we're generating, trying to understand the deeper meaning of this movie.
Perhaps somebody could make a video called What Beetlejuice is Really
Perhaps
About.
a werba is a foot. Werba is the internal name we use to refer to what blank is really about, because that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
So we invented the acronym werba. I'll just clip this out and just release it as what Beetlejuice is really about.
Yeah.
Daniel, any other thoughts on Beetlejuice?
Oh, I took some notes. I didn't write down notes.
You wrote these notes down weeks ago.
Before the writer's strike.
That's right.
Oh, well, I was just gonna make the point about like the movie is very adult in a lot of ways, and there were some actually pretty clever, funny jokes when Beetlejuice at one point, I think he gets like grabbed by somebody, so he shoots all these like thorns out of himself. And so then he's got all these thorns sticking out of him. So one could say he's very thorny. And so then he gets a desire to go to like basically like a strip club. Now replace thorny with a slightly different word to describe
Take the
that.
T out of that word. It's a very different word.
By the way, wasn't that a clever way for me to tell this joke?
That was really well done.
Yeah. So I actually like, as I watched that scene, I actually started laughing a lot. I was like, that's a really funny wordplay that once he has all these thorns sticking out of him, he starts feeling this way.
MJ says that Daniel is outthinking Gil. Hey, I could stand up here and make up a bunch of nonsense too, but I'm trying to keep it real, which is what I always do on one take.
Thank you, MJ.
All right. I guess that probably, I'm trying to think if I have anything else to say. Ask me.
One last point before I ask you. A lot of non-PC stuff as well, obviously.
Right.
We've talked about that. But just even the last scene with the Native American guy who like shrinks people's heads.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like the ending of the movie's Beetlejuice's head. And he's like, hey, what's going on here? Actually, I kind of like this. It's a pretty good look for me. A lot of jokes about suicide.
Were there?
A lot. Well, a few. Like there was a girl in the waiting room, and she was like the receptionist or something. She's like, oh, I wish I hadn't done this. And she shows her wrists.
Oh.
Yeah. And then like when they're at the dinner party, they were like, oh yeah, she tried to take her own life. Don't do it again. You know, it's really odd jokes. Yeah.
That was a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. Okay.
But we're not, I feel like people are going to call us really sensitive and stuff. We're just commenting on.
No, just pointing it out.
Just pointing it out.
We leave it up to you. See?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Gil, any last thoughts on Beetlejuice?
Yeah, I'm going to tie this in. So, Better Call Saul, one thing that Saul used to say all the time to psych himself up before going into court was he'd look in the mirror and he'd say, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to predict it.
Yeah.
It's showtime.
Right. And he was quoting Beetlejuice. There's a moment in the movie where he says that, showtime.
Beetlejuice says that?
Yeah, I think it's right before the end of the movie where they finally invite him out of the model again. He says that to himself before jumping out. All right. Let's wrap up Beetlejuice.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really say what we think about the fact that they're making a sequel.
That's what we're going into right now.
Oh, okay.
So they had announced, they've been talking about Beetlejuice 2 a lot. Right after the first movie came out, there were talks of a sequel. They had an idea that was going to be I think Beetlejuice goes Hawaiian or Beetlejuice something Hawaii, because I thought it would be funny to put him in the brightest possible backdrop and have that contrast. That never came together. The talks have come up again and again over the years. Then finally at CinemaCon, a few weeks ago, they were flashing up a bunch of logos, and one of them was Beetlejuice 2. So people were like, wait a minute, did they just confirm that Beetlejuice 2 is happening? Then earlier this week, they announced it officially. Beetlejuice 2 is coming out September 6th, 2024. Same day as Blade from the MCU, but that is one of the movies that has stopped production thanks to the writer's strike, so good chance that's going to get delayed. Beetlejuice 2 is not being delayed because it's already written, and in fact, they said they were going to start filming on May 10th, 2 days ago. So that movie should be filming now as we speak. Tim Burton is returning to direct. Michael Keaton coming back as Beetlejuice. Winona Ryder is going to be Lydia again, and she'll have a daughter who will be played by... If you had to cast a girl in a new Tim Burton movie, she does great with the goth aesthetic.
I know, but only because I saw the thumbnail for this video, and I was going to say to Gil, hey, who is this woman in the thumbnail? The whoever that actress is that plays Wednesday Addams.
Jenna Ortega. Jenna Ortega will be playing Lydia's daughter. And then Justin Theroux has been cast in a yet-to-be-revealed role. Who's Justin Theroux? I didn't recognize the name. I looked him up. He's written a bunch of stuff, acted in a bunch of stuff. Right now, he's in White House Plumbers, the drama series about the Watergate scandal. Who's writing it? So it's being written by Alfred Gauff and Miles Miller, who worked with Burton on Wednesday. They actually created the show. They're the ones who pitched it. So sounds like this, if you liked Wednesday, the Netflix show, seems like you're probably going to love this movie. Now, if you look at these writers, this is the question I always ask. When a movie's announced, is it going to be good? I look at the writers. I say, what else have they done? And they have a bit of a mixed track record. The Mummy. Tomb of the Dragon Empire. So the third Mummy movie. Shanghai Noon. I remember liking it as a kid. Shanghai Nights. Spider-Man 2.
Wait, both Shanghai Noon and Shanghai Nights, was it Owen Wilson?
Owen Wilson and Jackie Chan.
I like those movies.
Yeah, there's the moment where Owen Wilson is like, I'm invincible. I can't be killed. And he just walks out and gets shot out a bunch of times, and all the bullets miss. It's hilarious. They also wrote Spider-Man 2. And Herbie, Fully Loaded. And then, of course, Wednesday, which I didn't watch, but I know people love that show. Jenna Ortega dancing. People love that scene. I saw it all over TikTok. So, yeah. What do you think about this movie? What do you want to see? Are you excited for it?
Wait, did you say, is Michael Keaton in it to play Beetlejuice?
Yeah, he's coming back as Beetlejuice.
Oh, okay. I mean, I'm curious what they do. Like, actually, here's what I'm really curious about is what route will they go aesthetically, given like CGI and everything now?
Given Tim Burton's involvement, I feel like he would push to bring back a lot of the stop motion stuff.
That makes sense.
And maybe I wouldn't mind at all if they used CGI to enhance it, did a little bit of both. Because one of the things I really would love to see in the movie is I felt almost claustrophobic in this one. I'm like, I want to get out of the house. And then I'm excited when they draw the door, but we end up going into this dark, dank waiting room. I would love to see, and even when we first meet Beetlejuice, he's basically sitting in this like black void only lit by a candle. And maybe that is what the world of the dead is like. But I would love to see almost a Nightmare Before Christmas style underworld and see where does Beetlejuice live when he's not messing around in the world of the living. And to do that, so I wouldn't mind if they used a little bit of CGI to make that happen. And even when we go outside, it's in the sand dunes kind of place. It's such an empty place. Yeah. I would love to just see a more filled out underworld. And I want to see more Beetlejuice. That was one thing that surprised me going into this movie. Again, not knowing anything about it really, is how little Beetlejuice there was. I think he had about 15 minutes of screen time.
Yeah, isn't it funny that the movie's called Beetlejuice when he's not really the main character?
Yeah, it reminds me of that movie Kangaroo Jack, which came out, I think, in the early 2000s, where the trailers all had this like rapping, dancing kangaroo. But apparently that is a hallucination scene in the movie. And that character was really not featured very much. But they were like, we got to get people to see this movie. And what sells better than animated kangaroos? So that's probably the main thing I want to see out of this movie. In terms of the writers, I feel like Tim Burton's probably the most important part of the equation because, like we said, the first one didn't have that much of a story. It felt very strange. The climax felt like it came out of nowhere, but it was elevated by Tim Burton. The aesthetic, the humor, Michael Keaton. Anything else you want to see in Beetlejuice 2? Any other thoughts on this? Do you agree with me? Like, no, I want to stay just in the house. I don't want to see this world.
I agree with you. I guess Beetlejuice is just an interesting movie, right? I was just kind of curious to see what they did with it. So I'm curious generally to see what angles they take, maybe with like the themes in the second one.
I think probably Lydia was not very well. They didn't go much into her character. We don't know a lot about her. The fact that they're putting Jenna Ortega in this, and it's from the writers of Wednesday, tells me she's going to be much more of a focal point. It's not going to be about a couple. It's going to be probably, again, my guess is it's going to be about her, which I think they're going to develop her character more and probably try to get into some more developed themes. That's my guess. Wrap up the Beetlejuice 2 talk.
Yeah.
All right. We've been going a while here. The one other topic I wanted to mention is Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. I'm feeling major FOMO about this because I do like video games, but I have a hard time finding where to fit them into my schedule. But I told myself about a month and a half ago, I am going to beat Breath of the Wild so I can ride the hype train for Tears of the Kingdom. I did not beat Breath of the Wild. So I'm feeling major FOMO today. The game came out at midnight. Alon was up until I think 5 a.m. playing. And I did get a few quotes from him. So he's played the game for a few hours now. He said it has really interesting mechanics. So sometimes in a game, you'll get to these sections where you have to solve a puzzle. But the game only has a few set mechanics. And it's like, well, I just learned that one. So obviously I have to use that to solve the puzzle. So you don't get as much of a feeling of accomplishment because you're like, well, it was obvious what I had to do. Here, Alon tells me that the puzzles are, you look at them and there's not an obvious solution. And you feel like you're using really creative use of the techniques to solve them. Like you feel like you figured it out almost in the real world. It wasn't a video game where press A to do this and B to do that. It was just, here's a problem, solve it. That was kind of the biggest compliment that he gave the game so far. Do you like this game so far, Daniel?
I mean, it sounds cool. I really do. I really want to go back and beat Breath of the Wild also. But I don't even have a Switch. And I don't trust myself with video games. I have too addictive of a personality. So that's why I've held back.
Yeah, I have the addictive personality, but counter to that, I get really stressed out if I'm playing a video game because I'm like, I'm not being productive.
Yeah.
And that just starts to eat away at me. That's why I've made various attempts here and there to start doing some video game content because then I can actually play games and feel like I'm being productive. So that's the ultimate goal.
Maybe we should just stream playing Breath of the Wild. But I guess why would anyone watch somebody playing that when there's the new game out?
We should just call it Tears of the Kingdom live stream and just trick people into coming in.
Tears of the Kingdom prequel live stream.
All right, I think we can wrap it up here, right?
Yeah, maybe just somebody made a comment about, because we brought up Justin Theroux. Guy Incognito brought up that we should watch Leftovers, and MJ said it's very good. I have heard from a friend of mine that it's like, he says it's one of his favorite TV shows ever. And I do trust his opinion, and I really trust Guy Incognito and MJ's opinions as well. So maybe we should talk about it sometime.
Yeah, a lot of people in the comments, too, I've seen on previous videos have said, like, you guys have to watch The Leftovers. And then I said, it's an old show. Nobody wants to see content about it. So why would I watch it?
But clearly some people want to see content about it.
That's true. And I guess for our own enjoyment, too.
Yeah. If it's not fun, what's the point?
And that's probably a show you could Werba, what The Leftovers is really about. So you might see that down the road. Yeah, we have to watch Leftovers. I've been hearing that for a long time. I did watch the first couple of episodes years ago. I remember thinking the show is very dark. And I was not at a place in my life where I needed to invite more darkness in. But now that things are great,
let in a little darkness.
We can handle it, yeah.
Cool.
All right, Daniel, this was fun. We've been doing this every Friday It's been 4 weeks now. I'm pretty impressed with us. And I remember hearing in Super Size Me, if you want to start a new habit, in his case, it was eating McDonald's every day. He was like, it's hard at first, but once you do it 3 times, it's a habit. We've now done this 4 times. We officially have a habit. Now, like I said earlier in the stream, if you are sick of the assaults on your eyeballs and would rather take in this content through your ear holes, you can find us on any podcast app. Just search One Take. There are also links in the description, and I'll put links in a pinned comment.
And please, 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 even if you're not listening to us on a podcast, go to the podcast and leave us a positive review. That really helps. And please subscribe on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe.
You don't even have to leave a review. Like, some people don't like to write words.
Yeah.
But you could just click on the stars.
Just clicking 5 stars would super helpful.
Yeah. I can't say I'll give you $5 if you do that, because that would disqualify us. I can't say that.
Yeah, we can't say that we would do that. We can't say that we would do that. Did that land?
Guy Incognito says, regarding leftovers, no obligation to do a werba. I watched it without doing a werba too. All right, I'm going to follow your example, Guy Incognito. You're a trailblazer in watching television without creating werbas. MJ says, thanks, guys. Great dialogue. As good as the Conan podcast. Conan O'Brien.
Wow, thank you.
The tall guy.
He's tall?
Oh, yeah.
That's not what he's known for. He's known for being a redhead.
He's also known for being really tall.
I don't think that's what he's known for.
All right, wait, let's settle this right now.
Ask ChatGPT.
Hey, remember, who said you were out-thinking me? They're taking back that comment.
Conan is known as the redhead
Is
guy.
Conan known for being tall? I'm asking ChatGPT. Yes, Conan O'Brien, the American television host and comedian, is indeed known for his tall stature.
No, that's a leading question. Start a new prompt,
Right,
new prompt, and say, what is Conan O'Brien known for? What physical feature is Conan O'Brien known for?
Well, then it's going to be obvious. What physical feature?
Yeah, it's going to be redhead, not tall.
What physical feature? He's known for his tall stature.
What?
He stands at 6 feet 4 inches. His height often becomes a subject of humor in his comedy routines.
6'4" is tall. I mean, okay, I guess that's tall enough for it to be interesting that he's that tall. Anything above 6'2" is like pretty unique.
Says he's more known for having red hair. And we don't have to worry about this, by the way, because the WGA is saying that AI cannot create literary or source material. So we are not adapting anything. This AI gets no credit.
By the way, MJ agrees with ChatGPT.
ChatGPT says, apologies for the oversight. You are correct. One of the most prominent physical features is widely recognized for his distinctive red hair.
Okay, just one. Okay, but he's sitting. He's sitting most of the time. So how is it so distinctive that he's tall? When he's sitting, you don't see his tall. You see his red hair.
But he'll stand up and do goofy things.
Oh, he does. He does do that. That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, on his we were talking about his podcast. His podcast, I'm sure he's sitting.
Well, I think his podcast is probably also, I mean, if you're listening, you're not going to know that he's tall at all. Unless he brings it up all the time, but that would be quite obnoxious. I'm Conan O'Brien. I'm 6'4". That's kind of like, I was reading an article about the Ben Affleck controversy. And, where he shut the door and looked kind of stressed. And listen to the way that they talk about this. Fun fact, Daniel is actually 7 feet tall. Yeah, his legs are going out the other side of the table right now. It's okay. This is the article, thedailymail.co.uk. Ben Affleck appeared to slam the car door, ... Okay. The actor, 50, opens the door for 53-year-old Jennifer. Like, why do we have to know their age?
Yeah, that's random.
But they could have just picked any other attribute. The actor, 5'11", opens the door for 5'5" Jennifer, who slips into the passenger seat of the car, green, about 7 feet long.
Metal, 4 tires, suspension.
Adam says, it's about you, Daniel. He can scratch his feet with his head.
His head with his feet.
He's like some kind of ape mutant. Wait a minute, Adam, are you horning in on my chimp facts?
You mean thorning in?
Thorning in. Oh. Anyway, Adam, you can have chimps because I'm into sumo now. Oh yeah, I didn't give any sumo facts. Here, I've got one for you. How many calories a day do you think is normal for a sumo wrestler to consume?
Give me a second. 9,000.
What I read is 7,000 calories on ChatGPT to the rescue. Give me some great sumo facts. It's ancient. It's been around for 1,500 years.
That's pretty old.
Wow. Ring of battle. They take place in a circular clay ring about 4.55 meters in diameter.
4.55 meters in diameter. You heard it here first.
The wrestlers entered the ring, 4.55 meters in diameter. He was facing off against the other wrestler, 5'4", age 30. And going along with the physical attributes.
2 legs, 2 arms, rotund.
Yeah, exactly. This is my problem with calories. Do you have a few minutes to keep going?
Yeah, a few minutes.
Okay. I was overweight as a child. Let's just say if I knew sumo was a potential career path, I would have made some different choices. But when I was younger, I actually just didn't know how to lose weight and get into good shape. People would say, like, eat better, exercise more. But I'm a very mathematically minded person. So you can't just give me this nebulous goal of eat better. I need to see some... Adam says, aren't the sumo wrestlers 4.5 meters in diameter? See, that's the kind of great stuff you used to get from Adam on this podcast, you know? Just very confused rantings that don't make any sense. You get some classic DPDs, Daniel put downs. I'm a very mathematically minded person. I need to see results right away or understand the exact mechanics that will lead to the results. They never told us about calories. The one time they mentioned them, they were like, well, you know, if you want to lose weight, you got to lose 3,500 calories to lose a pound. But it's depressing. Get on a treadmill, you work out for an hour, you only burn 600 calories. So I was doing the math in my head, and I'm like, well, I eat like 2,000 calories a day. I'd have to get in a treadmill for 5 hours because they didn't tell us that your body, just in order to function, burns, you know, like 1,500 plus calories. If they had told me that, I would have been as thin as Conan O'Brien, 6'4".
Redhead,
fiery red hair. Apolock says they season the arena with salt because sumos eat it after the match. I don't know if that's true, but also...
Apolock would never lie to us.
Apolock, get your own thing. Sumo's my thing. Chimps are Adam's thing. They used to be my thing. Daniel's thing is crapping on legacy movies that people love.
And Stalin facts.
Adam says, I believe Apolock is correct. So they eat the salt they were fighting on? Or do they eat... Oh, no, they eat the... I get it. They eat the arena afterward.
Yeah.
I thought they were saying they eat the salt. All right, Daniel. Let's go do some sumo.
Let's go do our Shiko.
Let's go do our Shiko, which is harder than it looks.
Yeah. You want to do a quick demonstration of Shiko?
Thank you for joining us. All right, let's wrap it up. Thank you for joining us here on One Take Weekly. This was isn't the first person to eat the arena the winner? Yeah.
Wow, I really have been watching sumo wrong.
Thank you for joining us, and see you on the next One Take.